So do the two of you know each other?
And what is the objective, the title of your...
Truth.
What?
Truth.
Truth.
A dream of truth, for that truth is always a dream.
What is the truth?
you get to both tell.
No, Jesus already got that one. No, it was Pilate. He said, what is truth?
Oh, what is true?
Yeah, the essential truth that we have need for the emerging world.
So is somebody going to ask you questions?
Well, I wonder if the two of you might just, do you know each other? Are you friends?
We are
They never met before.
We have been friends for many years, but we just met.
Well, could we just witness, to start off with, a conversation between the two of you? And,
Of course,
yeah,
yes.
And just introduce each other.
In French?
No, I'll do German. I'm not so good in French.
You're German?
My best language other than English is German.
My name is Muller, which is also German.
I know. But you're an Alsatian German, so you're on both sides.
Exactly. Lorraine and...
we could start with that, couldn't we? Well, let us see. Since you are the man to be most honored in all this company, what would you like to talk about?
About what?
What would you like to speak about?
How about peace?
Oh my. Well, how the world is getting better and better.
Isn't that wonderful? You know what? I couldn't agree more. People come to me and say, I think the world is going downhill. I think that most people are really bad. And I say, that's not my experience. I feel that most people are really good and things are getting better all the time. But I also see there's a lot of detritus left over from the Dark Ages. It gets in the way, and we're trying to dump it. I think the world is definitely going where it needs to be. And every time I say that and see that, it seems to do it right there. So we make the world better by making our own world better and seeing it in all the people around us. Yeah.
Well, when I was born on a border where from my window I could see the border not to cross, because on the other side there were Germans. But they had the same name as we had.
Yes.
But they spoke the same language.
Yes.
And I said, well, how crazy can we be to have this border? This border, they should disappear. And you know, it has disappeared.
It has disappeared.
And all the borders in Europe have disappeared.
Yes.
Which is something really miraculous, but nobody complained. And I had my whole philosophy was from when I was a child. I said, this planet is so beautiful, nature is so beautiful, that there should not be any wars. How can there be any wars? And there was an elderly man called Robert Schuman, who became the minister of many things in France, and he created a united Europe.
With your help.
And when I met him once, I asked him, I said, what made you do what you did? Namely, you got rid of 25 borders in Europe. And you know what he told me? He had the same story as mine. He said, I was born at a place where Luxembourg, Germany, and France got together. Mm-hmm. And I was given one Christmas a new bicycle. And wherever I went with my bicycle, I was stopped because they had a border. And I swore that time that if in my life I will have the opportunity of suppressing these borders, I will do it. And he said, that's exactly what I did. I have suppressed the borders in Europe. And Europe is much happier as a result of that.
Oh, yes.
But it was his, it is like my own reason was, life is so beautiful. I always said as a kid, life is divine. I looked at the sky. I went to meetings to hear about the beautiful life we should have on this planet. And I wished, I prayed that all my life I would be able to do something for a very happy, peaceful world. And you know, it became a reality.
And
I entered the UN coming from a very poor little village. I was in the UN. I became an assistant secretary general in the UN. I was able to do so many things which are almost inconceivable. And now I'm retired. I'm retired already almost 20 years. And every day I do something. During the night, I woke up at 4 o'clock and I wrote a letter to the Secretary General of the UN. Here is something which you should do. And I do it with nations too. So that I have now written already, my wife, when I married Barbara, she said, you know, you have so many good ideas, you should write them down. And I never wrote them down. And since I did this, I have now written more than 7,000 ideas. And if I want to have a letter to a president which deals with a particular subject, the computer gives me pages and pages, and I send them the pages. So I select some from there. And I will never give up. During the last night, for example, I woke up at one point and I wrote a letter to the Secretary General, where the Secretary General now has announced that there will be a meeting about the development of happiness and peace in all the countries of the world. And I wrote to him and I said, look, I have convened a World Conference on happiness and peace already in 1971.
And you know what?
He didn't remember.
You know what? On the first day of that meeting, you should begin it by playing on your harmonica.
Oh, sure.
Ode to Joy by Beethoven, right?
The Ode to Joy, yes. Because most of the time, people who heard me speak years ago, they said, oh, Mr. Muller, we heard you speak. It was wonderful. We had this conference on top of the mountain in South America, and it was so intelligent, so great. And I said, do you remember something? One particular item? No. Oh, you don't? No. And then at one point, a lady jumped up. I know. What do you know? I know your harmonica. And since that time, I have my harmonica in my pocket. And whenever people get involved in something and it has no result, at the end of it, I said, you know, we didn't do much in our conference, but let me play the harmonica and hope that we will have a beautiful, better land.
You know what? Harmonica comes from the word harmony, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And I suppose you know this, but in Japanese, the word for harmony is wa. And this word wa is a nominative mark. They put an objective mark and a nominative mark in there. Wo is an object and wa is a subject. But every subject in Japan, when it is spoken or written, is marked by the word meaning harmony. Is that a good start?
Sure. Of course. Of course.
So there's your harmonica. There's another thing about borders in Japanese. The word border in Japanese is fuchi, which is actually a Chinese word. It means the limit of the chi. And a boundary is something that is seen as separating two things that it also unites. And so taking the right hand of a border and changing it to a bond of union instead of a separation is predicted by the Tao.
Yeah. But it's working, you know, there's more and more closer cooperation between the countries. Of course, it's difficult because they were all born at the time when the animals were born, and they went around and settled down, so they had to create a language. They had to create a god or a religion, and they were living. There are 2,000 schemes like this lived in isolation or in wars. They make wars against the next one if the next one was a little bit too dangerous. And now suddenly they are all brought together, and to get these languages and these religions together is not easy at all.
Religion is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Now, you know what? There is something I have found about that's absolutely astounding. And the first thing I like to say is, try this one. Grace is gravity, and gravity is grace. What? What is gravity? Attraction, seen between physical objects. What is grace? Attraction, seen between spiritual essences. But since gravity and grace are both the same thing, and since everything is made of spirit, therefore gravity and grace are the same thing, but not quite. Because gravity operates in space-time, and grace operates beyond it.
Yeah.
Now, therefore, but then that gives us something else that I find from Yogananda's teacher, Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar, in which he gives us the succession of the ages and gives us 4 measures of time. And I think this is a good paradigm to start working with, because time brings cycles of change, and they come according to the grace gravity of the sun and the stars. And as they move away or toward each other, they pull our feelings and hearts with them. It's literally happening. Now, the day, what is a day? A day is from midnight to noon and back again. What is a year? From winter solstice to summer solstice and back again. What is an age? An age is from Kali Yuga to the Satya Yuga and back again. From the Dark Age to the Golden Age and back again. 24,000 years. Due to the interaction of 2 stars, our sun and the dog star Sirius. All of this is in the Vedas. What? But what's the 4th one? The 4th one has to do with the journey of the solar system around the galaxy. And the center of the galaxy is the Vishnu Nabhi, according to them. And that journey is in the nature of millions of years. But it also has a plus and a minus. And every time this happens, when the stars are in the dark age, we are drawn down and lose brain capacity. And when it moves into the upper ages, the brain is increased in its power. And Yukteswar gives us the actual numbers. In a dark age, we can only use maximum 15% of our brain. In the Dvapara Yuga, the second one, we get 25%. In the Treta Yuga, we get 75%. And in the Golden Age, we get 100%. And when the Golden Age comes, everybody's a master. Everybody looks at everyone else as if they were themselves. In the Golden Age, you don't need external technology. In the Golden Age, we travel the universe together. We are totally one being in many cells like a human body. And it is that Golden Age that draws us on. It's happened before, it'll happen again. The best news is the Dark Ages are over. They were over in 1703. And we are 300 years out of the Dark Ages. We are moving from a brain possibility of 15% to 25%. And the pressure of that change is causing the people to find each other again. We're coming out of a dark age and a war of destruction and violence. Now, unfortunately, in all of these seasons, there's an overlap, just like there is a winter in the summer and summer in the fall. And during that overlap, the accumulation of the former age influences far into the one that's coming. We are nearest to the Dark Ages, and the shadow of the Dark Ages are still running the governance of the world, but they're beginning to let go. And all we have to do is cooperate with the rising grace gravity of the stars and the sun, which are the intermediaries of divine grace. They are angels. The angels are the stars. Well, what do you know? And they can pull you down and be demons, or they can pull you up and be angels. This is going to be discovered as the true physics of the universe. And all we have to do now is cooperate with it. It's going in the right direction. I think that's kind of an important thing, don't you? Yes, we are beginning to love each other again. Yes, we are beginning to think of ourselves as being one being. Yes, we are here for the joy, not for the sorrow. And Lao Tzu says it extremely well. Lightness of heart is the fountain of youth and the doorway of eternal life. Nothing is more serious than lightness of heart, and nothing is more frivolous than unrelieved sorrow. That's it. And so, you have been a hero. You have been a hero because you saw what needed to be done, and you did it. So congratulations.
Thank you. Oh my.
Can I interrupt just for a second? I'm going to move this just ever so slightly.
Can I notice one thing about, if you notice the symbols on Charlie's chest, both of them have the cross, and Charlie often wears the symbol from the Indians as well, although you don't have it on this time. Charlie also wears a, you know that symbol the Indians give you?
Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
Thunderbird.
don't have it quite often, so.
So,
By the way, I
You
was
don't have
thinking,
your Thunderbird with you, do you?
I almost put it on this morning, though. I should have done it. Yeah.
I'll let you ask that in just a second. Save that just for a second. He was talking about joy and how that can help bring peace. Do you have anything to say about spreading peace or waging peace?
And by the way, the religions are the big problem.
Yes, they are the most difficult to get together because it's all in the name of God and it's all a permanent truth.
And the trouble is, they are all religions that originated in the Dark Ages and are on the wrong track.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to correct the religion to speed things up.
They are the last ones to begin to talk to each other and to find a solution. That is absolutely correct.
That's right.
But you wanted me to say something about joy?
Joy and how that helps to bring peace.
Well, it's very, very important. This is something which I have noticed in the United Nations. It is when you have a meeting of the General Assembly. You have these men mostly who are very intellectual. They have many small ideas, big ideas, all kinds of things. And sometimes it becomes to a point that they begin to oppose each other and really to have a mess in the United Nations. And I have taken it as a rule to say that in every United Nations meeting there should be a girl or a woman or a gentleman who would start with, at one point, with a joy or with a happiness. I would like to have happiness be something absolutely essential for the whole world and not in relay. Because when you are happy, then you are fully operating. And it's happening. You have more and more happiness in meetings around the world. And not only happiness, what is even as important as happiness is smile. And it's smiling is the great thing of women. So when you have women who smile, it creates a different atmosphere. So that we have to elevate our efforts to have peace with the concept of happiness. I have induced my wife, who never wrote a book, to write a book on happiness. And she's now quite happy and it works on it. And we ought to have a whole literature of happiness. And in most governments, it's put on the side, you know, maybe a little bit no. I think the head of a country should make a speech at the end of the year and speaking about the happiness of the people. By the way, you had recently an example that made quite some noise in the world. It is when they had a meeting of heads of states and they wanted them to have a plan for the future. There was the president of Bhutan who said, "You want me to give you the extent of the economic, whatever is this, complicated things? I don't know what it is, and I don't want to hear of it. What I expect from my people is to give them happiness." And it went all over the world. The intelligent guys, you know, with their brains, they didn't know what to think. This man was right. If my people are happy, then that means that I'm well organizing my country, you know. And not to find out if economically I have the percentage which is declared to be absolutely indispensable if you want to have a good country. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to have the people to be happy. And we ought, I'm recommending very, very strongly that we should, in the whole system of the world, we should give a very big opening to happiness, to smiles, to love, to good things that happen. People take an initiative which might be wonderful, the wonder. And we should not limit everything to economics and to politics and so on. I remember, yes?
You know what? I heard about that too. And here's the story that I heard, and I loved it. Same reason you do. But I understand the Indian government wanted to build a dam in Bhutan. And then contribute to the gross national product.
The gross national product, that's the word.
And they said, Bhutan no longer interested in gross national product.
That's it.
Bhutan interested in gross national happiness.
Exactly. You know, you remember it better than I. Oh my. You know, there's also, I have something which is recent, which happened to me. I don't remember exactly where, but there was a lady who in the atmosphere, in the outside of the place, she said, "Oh, Mr. Muller, you cannot imagine how I liked the great world conference which you had on our mountain, the Machu Picchu or something like this. It was incredible. And the speech which you delivered and the other speeches, they were absolutely marvelous." And then I said to her, "Well, that's very good news. I'm happy to hear it. Do you remember something from what was said there?" She made a face. And she said, "No, I don't remember anything." "What do you mean? You do not remember any proposal or idea which was given there?" And she said, "Well, I'm sorry to say, but I must confess, I don't remember anything." And then suddenly her face bloomed and she says, "Yes, I remember something." And I said, well, I'm glad. I remember when you played the harmonica. And since that time, that was about 2 or 3 years ago, I have always my harmonica in my pocket. And even in a government meeting or in the General Assembly of the UN, I will never make a speech without at the end having the harmonica. And they're quite happy with it. Why should we always do it with the brain only? We should do it with the heart.
That's it. The harmonica is for the harmony of the heart.
Well, it's the heart, exactly. And the heart is not far from the brain, you know. We should always use the heart. The brain should ask the heart, what do you think of that? And the heart would put something into what the brain has calculated. The Western world is all very strongly on the brain, and that is not good.
Well, that's male orientation. You know, the female has much more heart stuff in it, whether it's male or female.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I have a thing about that, very much about that, which has to do with the estrogen and the testosterone and the progesterone. Now, when a boy goes through puberty, his testosterone goes up 75 times, which makes him a warrior, right? When a woman goes through puberty, her estrogen goes up 5 times. Estrogen is almost as dangerous as testosterone, but she gets a lot less of it, so she's not quite so ferocious. But nonetheless, the one we want is the progesterone. Progesterone makes a mother. It makes the mother put the child's welfare ahead of her own. Without that, the human race would not survive. And what I suggest is that we all need lots of progesterone. And we need to get a new miracle drug out here that does what progesterone does, and we need to make it legally required to drink a glass of it every morning. And the world would then go out and be cured of its problems in a second. Because, male or female, I call it progesterone proclivity. And what I say is, we should require that it be taken every day, because progesterone proclivity portends the peace of the world and the happiness of all. Because happiness comes from ecstasy, and the two words are almost interchangeable. And ecstasy is the only dependable motive of conduct of every sentient being in the universe. And what progesterone does is make you realize the rules for ecstasy, which are simple. Get your ecstasy by giving it away, and the world shall be well. Never take it without giving it first. Oh, well now, that's a good idea. And we even have the drug in us, the hormone in us, and we all have a little progesterone. We need a lot more. So that's sort of a, maybe the United Nations should talk about that.
Well, I've decided a long time ago to do the following, that in any circumstance which is only intellectual, I will always put in something which is sentimental. And I remember that at one point during the war, I was arrested by the Germans because I wanted to cross the Atlantic and to not get into the German Hitler army. And I was in a prison, and it was horrible. It was a cellar in the city of Metz, and there was only a window to let a little air in, and there were, normally you could have 2 or 3 prisoners, and they had up to 40 or 50, just pressed once against the other, and waiting until they are interrogated seriously. And I said, my God, this is horrible. And would you be able to be happy in a situation like this? And I said to myself, well, you should try. Why don't you try to be happy in one of the worst circumstances of your life. And then I had an idea. I got a pencil from one of the boys, from the people there, and I went towards the door. And on the door, which was a new, very good door in that cellar of that building, I began to write a novel on top. That I fell in love with a beautiful girl in the mountains of Himalaya. And you know, and I wrote it, and I wrote it, and I wrote it, and I completely forgot that I was in prison. So that I gave to myself the proof that even in the worst circumstances, there is always something which you can do with your brain and your heart, not to be affected and to say, oh, they're going to kill me, that's going to happen, this is horrible, that will last so many days, etc., etc. And finally, after about a week, they let me go because I couldn't find anything against me. But I've never forgotten this, that I was able to be happy even in a prison.
You know what?
Wow.
You know what? That's about reality. What is reality? Is it a thing? No. It's a dream of a thing. Our reality is in our dream, not in the object of our dream. And why is that? Do I see you? No. I see the light reflected off of you. Is that what I see? No. It's the effect of the light in the retina of my eye. Is that what I see? No. It's the code that the retina puts on my optic nerve. Is that what I see? No. It's what the brain makes of the code. Anything the brain makes is a dream. Which way is the dream stimulated? From in here or out there? If it's from in here, it's a vision. If it's from out there, it's a perception. Which is reality? Both of them. I don't see you. I see my dream of you. And you see your dream of me. Let us pay attention to our dreams. Let us dream of happiness by finding happiness all around us. And here's the prayer of St. Augustine. He was a villain most of his life, but in the end he gave up and became an alchemist and made the following prayer. O beauty, o pulchritudo, tam antiqua et tam nova. O beauty, so old and so new, late have I loved you. I saw you outside myself because I was outside myself. And behold, you were within, and it is there that I have found you.
Well, you know, something which I am doing and which is very successful, it is to refuse to be old.
Yes.
I'm 84 years old and I've never felt so good.
And the other day,
I'm not old, period. I just put it away from me. I'm a happy guy. Even at 84, and I will reach at least 100. I will try.
Well, you will.
One never knows.
Well, you know, that's exactly right. I'm about to be 80. I'll be 80 in 15 days. And octogenarian. But I find that I don't grow older, I grow younger.
That's even better than mine. I will try from now on.
Oh, you're way ahead.
But I don't want to get too old, too young.
No,
I still like love, you know, and my wife. So yours has, I'm not 100% persuaded by yours. I prefer mine.
Oh, well, you're certainly entitled.
Oh my.
But it's true, I feel much younger than I did when I was young. When I was young, I was much too serious, and I was kind of unhappy, and I didn't know what to do, and there were all kinds of things wrong all the time. Nothing is wrong now. It's all gone. And
that's true, what you say, yes. I remember too.
Yeah. Remember that?
You were always influenced by all kinds of things, to be unhappy, to work harder, to make a competition in your life. Yeah. It was very, very difficult to be young, especially adolescent, when the job question came up.
Right.
And it was not so easy. And young people were not taught to be. And the funny thing is that it is mostly the young people who were happy who got the job.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my. I could give examples.
Yes.
I could give examples of where a chap, a very important guy, was offering a job, and then there were about 3 or 4 people outside of the room, you know, and each of us, I was there too, and we were waiting to get in and to have a talk with this man. And I remember that when I went into to talk to him, he had there 2 people whom he had not dealt with. And he asked the woman, he said, are you really happy with the job I offer you? Oh, I would be fantastically happy. Okay, you got it. He didn't even ask her any question. You know, how happiness can be determining in your life. A high official in a government does not want to be bothered by people who have lots of doubts. They prefer to take people who are devoted to what they believe. There is no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
It's something which we should not forget.
Well, after all, if you are happiness, you have happiness, it spreads. And when happiness happens, it tends to make people who are not quite happy happier.
Uh-huh.
Because they feel it, unless they do something which people sometimes do, and that is envy your happiness as if they can't do it. Now this is a real problem. So, but I have a thing that I do. I do this all the time. I go around to people, and when I see signs of happiness on them, I go up to a man and I say, "Pardon me, sir, I hope this will not offend you, but I find that you're a happy man." And they always say, "Wow, thank you. First time anybody noticed."
There's also the fact that all the marriages, all the couples, they are born from happiness.
Yeah, of course. They stay
This
together.
is very, very fundamental. The feeling of happiness was an indication that this would give them a happy life.
Yeah,
It's very, very important.
that's really true. It's important.
Yeah.
And there are 2 things about marriage. One is bonding, and the other is bondage. And when I marry people, I say, bonding yes, bondage no. When the bondage comes, it's all over.
I'm going to interject here because we get a little bit of noise on the camera. But it's this thing I shared with both of you. It's not how old you're getting, but how many times around the sun you've been. It's
How
a
many
sign
times?
around the sun you've been. It's a sign of wisdom.
A sign.
You mean the around?
Instead of saying in cultures what age is called a question.
Yes.
The older you get, in many societies, okay,
Yes.
it's you're increasingly marginalized in society. But a lot of indigenous cultures, there's no such thing as how old you are, but it's how many times around the sun you've been. If I say 84 times around the sun, that suddenly, in linguistics, is a sign of wisdom, and that's what I impart with people to say. Forget it. Don't ever say how old you are. How many times around the sun you've been, because it changes the perception.
Very good. That's very good. That has to do with the ages.
Yeah.
You know what? In that thing of the perception, it's really an important thing for us to identify happiness in ourselves and others, and be sure you compliment people on it.
Yeah.
We become an agent of spreading the word. But you're right. Life is about joy. And this brings up for me the American Declaration of Independence. The one thing that America needs to do, and that everyone needs to do, is discover what dream is their nation.
Yeah.
Without a defined dream, a nation falters. The American dream didn't come from Europe. It came from the native people here. And it was, curiously, it's on the dollar bill, but they have it backwards. And I'll even put it in Latin, make it sound European. The true American dream is this. Annuit ceptis, renovatio ordinis saeculorum, e pluribus unum, ut in Deo et in nobis semper confitemur. Translation? Annuit means to nod with approval, but I prefer to say, for the divinity has breathed with approval upon the things we have begun, a renewal of the ancient order of affairs, that out of many should be one, in order that in the divinity and each other we may forever trust. That's a nation. It's trust that makes a nation. And when people are happy, they trust each other. That's one of the reasons for being happy. And without that trust, the nation is only a theory. So I propose, that is the golden age. That's the way the nations of the Americans who were here before the white men, that was their dream. They trusted each other. They loved each other. They were empowered. They lived in joy. They celebrated life every day. And when we came here, unfortunately, we took it away from them. We had no respect for that. And yet, it got on our dollar bill, but all backwards. It got on there with Hitler's idea instead of the right one. It was new order of affairs, right? Here's the way it reads on the dollar bill. For the divinity has nodded approval upon the things we have begun. A new order of affairs, that out of many should be one, in order that in God alone we may trust. Well, that's not good enough. It's not a new order. It's a very ancient one. The order of the golden age. It's implicit in us. Let us begin to dream that dream that we should live in a world in which trust is normative. The other day, a Chinese man came from China to do business, and he said, you Americans have too much paperwork with all your stuff. How many papers, papers, papers. He said, in China, we still work on a handshake. And I said, well, now that's a pretty potent nation. If China's going to win, that's why they're going to win, because they trust each other. And we're going to lose because we don't. So it's a matter of national survival, and the greatest of all patriotic duties is to be happy and learn to trust the people around you and help them to trust you as well. So that's the sort of United Nations thing, isn't it?
By the way, the question of the tour around the sun, I've never even gotten to it, because living in Europe, in Alsace-Lorraine, which was challenged by Hitler, by all the thing, in the family you had only one talk. Who is the next minister coming into government? What are the Germans now going to invent again? And the year and the time was something which was so daily that we never came to the point of dreaming and of thinking how many times we went around the earth. You are the first one now who makes me thinking of that. And now that I'm older and married, and in a country like Costa Rica and in the United States, there it's much easier to think in terms of the place in the world. But you have places, I'm sure, but at the time of Hitler, that was completely, totally impossible. You have to think even what's going to happen next year, next week. What are they going to come up with? They were putting people in prison for no reason whatsoever. So I'm glad that you came up with another broadening of our vision, namely, let's look into this. And maybe if we have a good number of good years, we are better up to heaven, no?
Yes, and the thing is, again, remember that your heart is moved by this gravity grace of the sun.
Oh, sure.
And
oh,
you
yes.
know, if that's really true,
You're right.
I had a lady one time who was afflicted by winter. And whenever winter came, she would just be so depressed. And so I said to her, Claire, why don't you go to Australia in the winter and have summer all the time and you'll be happy? She said, oh, that's a good idea. So off she went to Australia. And I said, did it work? She said, yeah. Didn't get my winter depression. And I said to her, well, good. Want to do it again this year? No, I don't think I'll stay here. And I said, don't do it, Claire. You'll be sorry. And darned if something strange didn't happen. I went to India that year, and I came back to New York and had to go up to Lake Placid. And I was up there visiting a boy that I'd raised who was in school there. And when I came back, I find that Claire had died in New York State while I was there from forgetting to leave the country in the winter. It killed her. And I thought, oh my Lord. Yes, we must have mercy on each other. Yes, winter is a hard time, not just physically, but spiritually. That's why Christmas is such a great day. It isn't Christmas, it's winter solstice. When the sun rises from the dead on the 25th of December, having been in the tomb for 3 days. Does that sound familiar? Now, this rising of the sun, that day is sacred because we all feel the change. The sun isn't diminishing anymore, it isn't dying, it's rising from the dead. Yes, we're getting set free here. It's the grace gravity of the stars. Come on, guys, this is big stuff. It is true. We are moving in the heavens.
Yeah.
We are citizens of an eternity. We are there in the midst of forces so great we cannot imagine them, and yet they move us every day.
Yeah,
Right?
we are not taking cognizance of the role of the sun in everything that happens on this planet.
That's right.
There's no doubt.
That's right.
It's people don't think about that.
No.
They look at the summer, the sun for the summertime and the beach, and that's about it.
Yes,
You are right. That's a very important phenomenon.
it is. And this cross that I wear here is a solar cross. And this cross is 550 years old,
Oh my!
and it comes from Mexico before Cortez. It's the Vera Cruz, the true cross that he saw upon posts all along the coast. And this is also a diagram of the ziggurat of Ur. It's 2 paths of the sun. The blue path by day and the red path by year. And where they cross is the violet flame. And this sun symbol is totally involved in all the original religions of the world, in which they saw the sun and the stars as the intermediaries of divine grace, and that the power of them to attract your heart and to let you down, and that power is the power that comes from the manifesting power of the universe through the stars to your heart. Call that the love of God, wouldn't you? But look at it, it's measurable, it's scientific.
That's very important.
Experiential.
Yeah. Exactly.
Not
yeah.
something you have to believe in, it's knowledge.
Yeah.
Oh, wow,
No doubt.
yes. Gives God a good reputation,
No
doesn't
doubt.
it?
Oh my!
Oh, I'm almost out of tape on these, but I'd like to feed you a little information for when I change the tapes. We're in a new positive change for humanity, I think, and you two are a big part of it. And with that positive change, I think we might be getting away from thinking and getting more into feeling. the heart, and that's what you're talking about. And with the chakra system, the heart represents peace, harmony, laughter, and love. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. In the chakra system, that's what the sutras they call in Vedantas. So I wonder if all this is all intertwined with the change in humanity. Peace, harmony, laughter, love are those are the keys to the positive change in humanity. Do you feel as though it's related?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You bet.
I'm going to grab 2 tapes over here to change, and I wonder if would you like some water? Take a break for a minute.
Oh, you have some water down there.
Charlie, do you want the bottle of water?
Let me change the tapes. Would you mind if we go for a little while longer and
Sure, no, go ahead.
I'm fine, thank you. Well, let me have some of that.
When you were talking about about so much about happiness, and then you mentioned the Declaration of Independence, where I thought you were going was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Which
I
is,
was, but I didn't get there.
which is such an integral part. It was supposed to be, I think, an integral part of our beginnings that got lost somewhere.
Yes, I like to say the pursuit of happiness is not quite the right statement. Pursuit of the sense of the meaning of life. We can't define the meaning of life, but we have the sense of it, or we don't. When we have the sense of the meaning of life, we're happy. And when we don't, there's something missing. And so we should operate to get that sense. And listen to what it says. You hold these truths to be self-evident, that all human beings are created equal and endowed by their Creator with an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of the sense of the meaning of life. Wouldn't that be about perfect?
Yeah.
And there it is in the American Declaration of Independence. They didn't get it from Europe. They got it from the native people. The Celts used to have it, but that got buried by Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
Pursuit of excellence.
Okay, I'm going to run to the bathroom for 1 second.
We've been still rolling.
Is it possible to try to I know that if I were sitting at home watching this on television, I would be thinking, how do we reconcile all of these lofty thoughts and aspirations with what we see happening with the global corporatization of the world? How do we come to terms with that?
With what, please?
The global corporatization of the world.
Oh, yeah, you're right. This is something very serious.
So how do we, what are some of the ways that we can stop this, change it, transform it?
That the United Nations will never be allowed to look into corporations.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh,
Well,
yes.
of course, we have a Nazi government right now. The Bush administration is a Nazi government. His grandfather, Prescott Bush, was a Nazi in the German-American Bund. And the Bush administration and the neocons have a totally Nazi idea. And that Nazi idea is corporate.
What?
Corporate.
Corporate.
In which heartless corporations rule people who need their hearts. And they become dedicated to greed without any mediation, and they are the enemy of human happiness par excellence. For instance, another thing they would never let you do is discuss a maximum on the profit margin. Remember, they always had the things about a maximum interest rate, came out of the Bible, 10%, a tithe. Well, that was on a loan of money. But which is worse? An interest rate out of control or a profit margin out of control? In a profit margin, you rip off everybody on both sides. and take a whole bunch of money for somebody that doesn't need it. That has to be stopped. That's criminal activity. And the Bush administration wouldn't let you do that either, because they are totally dedicated to greed and violence and fear. Now, Adolf Hitler was a beast, and so is George Bush. America is now the Nazi Germany of this time, and it's time that we see it very clearly. Fortunately, the people rejected them at the last election. I'm sure they'll, and I think they're waking up and seeing what is going on here. This is treason we're looking at. It isn't only indictment, or it isn't only a question of impeachment. My personal opinion is, George Bush has handlers. He's not like Hitler because he's not smart enough. But his handlers are smart enough. And Hitler had his handlers too, but he was a very dominant fellow. George Bush is not dominant. He just does what he's told. But I think that George Bush should be impeached, but I think his handlers should be tried for treason. I believe as an attorney that will stand up in court.
His security is his impeachment security is Cheney.
Yes.
Come on through. Come on through.
Yeah.
Because it would turn even more crazy.
And they have betrayed the American dream. They have betrayed the Declaration of Independence, and they have betrayed the hopes of mankind. The United States was looked to because of that philosophy of the equality of all humans, which played into people's remembrance of the Golden Age, and they said, America's leading us there, let's go. And here these people have made it just the opposite. They have put America back into the Dark Ages and made them unbeloved by the entire world by betraying the dream of humanity. These people have to be stopped, they have to be exposed, and they have to be dealt with. Now, as a district attorney, I'm ready to prosecute. It's time. And it's time we said it straight out. Lots of people are saying it straight out. The other day, it was said back in New York, in the New York Times, and it was quoted to, what's his name? My name went blank.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. He said it all, just like that. I said, good. You're a very rich man and very powerful. You own most of New York. That's what we need to hear from you guys. Let's have it again. And I think America is on trial before the court of the world, in a court of conscience, for betraying its own dream. So let's define our dream. Let's lay out what we're doing. Let's see what mankind is about. Let's desire the happiness of all people, because when all the people are happy, there is no war. So let's get past it. Let's do it. And the people who do these evil, evil things need to be exposed as masters of deceit. Now, what is a master of deceit? Well, it's a master. A master is someone who knows how to do everything right. A master of deceit is someone who has learned to do everything right and uses that power to do bad things. In the Dark Ages, masters of deceit rule the world. That's what we're recovering from. So, we need to go back to the other time, to the time when true masters, who never rule the world, but only help everybody get along, who never try to exploit anybody, but whose great joy is making other people happy. These are the leaders that we need. In Christianity, we have to defend Jesus from the idea of the Christ. The Christ is the emperor. The Christ is the one who speaks to Jesus in the desert and says, bow down and worship me, and I will give you all the kingdoms of the world, to which by birth you are entitled. And Jesus says, no way, hupage, get out of here. Tempter, Satan, ego, go away. I do not want to be a Christ. I want to be a Jesus. And what does Jesus mean? Pure essence in Sanskrit. What is the pure essence of every being? The manifesting power we call God. But Jesus looked within himself and found it wholly there and realized it's in everybody just like it's in him, and went out to help other people do what he'd done, find the power in himself. That's what masters do. It's very simple, really. And Jesus is the best possible example. However, the Christian churches are all following Christ and not Jesus. That's part of the conspiracy. Let us rescue Jesus from the church. Let us know that Jesus said an old song from Oklahoma. You know, anything I can do, you can do better? No, it's anything you can do, I can do better. No, it's anything I can do, you can do better. You can do anything better than me. That's what Jesus said, literally. But the Christ said the other one. Anything you can do, I can do better. It's a marvelous, humorous insight into the most profound problem in the world. Reaffirm our power to awaken joy in those around us, and we have touched the lintels of heaven, and literally touched them. We are citizens of the stars. We belong to the universe. There's a tribe in Africa which tells us exactly how much we belong. Life doesn't begin with birth, it begins with conception. And at that moment of conception, they say, we begin to travel the galaxy. And we visit stars for 3 months, which seems like several thousand or million years. And then at the trimester, we tergiversate. We turn around and put our back to the stars and look into the world where we come. And all the women of the tribe gather around for that moment. And the child, returning to her, speaks the name it has acquired among the stars. And says it to them telepathically. And then as one person, they sing the name back to greet the child into the nation into which it will be born. Just think about that for a minute. That's a golden age society. That's a literal survival of original innocence. A society of a nation to which everyone would desire so deeply to belong. There it is, still there. What? There are others. They're not all gone. And we need to find them, to imitate them, to learn to do what they do. Talk about the United Nations. There will be no nations. The entire world is one nation. What does nation mean? Nosko, to be born. You are born into your nation. And that nation is the whole human race. And not only the human race, but the trees, and the birds, and the stars, and the dogs, and the cats, and the grains of sand. We are born into a miracle. It's all alive. And to get our churches talking that way could really make a difference. And unless they do, they are doomed. I've written a letter to Cardinal Mahoney, who's an old friend of mine. And I gave him a copy of my book. And on it I said, Roger, would you please appoint a theologian to talk to me? Not for my benefit, but for yours. I would like to tell you what's happening and where it's going and what you might do about it. Are you interested or not? Well, you know what? I just might hear from Roger. I just might. And I will say to him, well, Roger, I know you can't do this because the Vatican won't let you. But I know you can think about it because I'm sure you really want to. So let us rescue Jesus from the church. Let us rescue the egalitarian from the tyrant. And Let us see that the entire universe is helping us do it. We don't have to despair. The grace is everywhere. And thus, a vision comes.
It's gotten rather noisy here.
Yeah.
I wonder, should we move inside? That was beautiful.
Okay, Roger, Robert, how's your energy holding up?
The what?
How's your energy holding up?
So.
Would you like to take a nap?
No, it's the cold which is a little bit
Yeah.
disturbing.
It's a little bit cold.
Let's
There
shut
you
it
are.
down here.
Yeah.
Let's shut it down.
Okay, let me tell Barbara.
The harmonica, which children will have, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so the auto joy of Beethoven on 10 holes. Just think you can do it?
Oh,
Okay.
not me.
Okay? Good. You even can play, I can play harmonica and you can dance it. Excellent. That's
I'll
a good
be
combination.
I'll be the dancing bear, right?
Oh, voila. Oh my.
Let's go inside. Where's
All right.
the wall?
All right,
That was
let's.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Bravo!
Wood which I wrote down years ago because it was the Indians, the American Indians, who asked me, said, Mr. Muller, do you have a
Heartstick.
wooden thing
You don't think they
to
would
put
keep
your ideas?
Advertisements.
And here it is. And yesterday was a television program
Yeah.
where they asked about this, and here it
Heartstick.
is. Here it is.
Wonderful.
And I even said to Barbara, we should have it always personal there, so never to forget it.
Right. This is nothing. You should have seen when Wisdom Media came. We didn't have a house when they were there.
No.
I'm recording right now already. You want to come over here?
Yes, I do.
Well, I think it's utterly remarkable that you and I should meet just now.
Yeah, well, I think some people told me that
I
this
think
would
so.
be.
Why couldn't it be a little bit closer
no
together? I
doubt.
mean, it's not far apart.
We have the same views, the same understanding of the totality of the world.
Yeah.
Because there are many things which are very negative.
You really like
My God.
Oh, yeah.
Secret is so.
Well, I consider those things to be the detritus of the Dark Ages. The remnants. I have a thing about the North Pacific Ocean. The North Pacific Ocean is the biggest sea without an island in the world. And around that ocean there runs a current all the way around called the North Pacific Gyre, circulating around like this. That causes all the junk picked up on the continents to be collected out in the middle, where it sinks to the bottom and makes a great big pile of trash down the bottom, dark and decaying. Now, also, there are volcanoes. It's the Ring of Fire. And the Aleutian Islands are plugged-in volcanoes that go and blow up. The Hawaiian Islands, on the other end, are volcanoes that just flow. Now, as I look at that, I think, as a symbol, what I'd like to do is just think about taking one of those Aleutian Islands and putting it underneath the pile of junk. And then imagine it pushing up underneath and making it get all agitated till the whole thing just falls away and up comes the mountain and stands there in the middle of the sea. And I said, that's what's happening. All the trash of the Dark Ages is all collected there, but underneath it is coming this rising of the ages, pushing up and making it all fall away. And every time we participate in making that happen, it moves a little bit farther. And eventually it comes up into the sunlight and the whole world is changed. I think that would be a very good artistic production, don't you? And that's what's happening. That's what we feel, I think.
Let me just try to find a paper which will remind me of a few things.
All right.
Hola.
Well, I'll tell you what. You fix the government, and I'll fix the church. How's that?
The what?
You fix the government, and I'll fix the church. How about that?
Well, here is a paper which I wrote about a year or so ago, which is the absolute urgent need for proper Earth government. That our world government is not what it should be.
Right.
And here I have some figures which are very revealing, namely that the Earth speaks to me. It's a dialogue with the Earth, where the Earth says to me, after I have made a kind of view of the future to the year, the highest level of the world population, and then the Earth says to me, yes, but I hear that at the present rate, you will be 9.3 billion people in the year 2050 and stabilize only at 10.7 billion in the year 2200, which means 4.8 billion more people than today. You will increase by 80 million people every year. You will end by destroying me. That is what in official circles is being accepted, and it's not being counteracted by anyone. It is incredible. We have increased from 2 billion to 6 billion 2 years ago. Yeah. And it goes on like this.
That is the biggest problem we face.
Yeah.
Overpopulation is destroying the oceans, destroying the forests, destroying the natural life, destroying the livability of this planet. It has to stop. And,
but the U.S. is against. Bush was against it.
Of course.
Because we at the United Nations, we convinced the United States to look into this incredible population increase to come. And they asked their embassies to make sure that the people were not having children just because they didn't know how to make love. In other words, they made love and nobody ever taught them that they can have only 1 or 2 children, which they wanted. They didn't want to have all those children, but they had all these children. And the UN was able to convince, and we even got a reduction of about 2 billion people over the last 60 years, 50 or 60 years. And with Bush, what he did was order every embassy of the United States around the world never anymore to give any advice to these countries that you can make love without having necessarily children.
That's the fault of the church.
Can you imagine? And the church, of course,
the church
is behind it too.
What's behind it?
Yeah.
The church and the are behind it. Now the thing is that this is a criminal action. This is an action of murder and destruction, not only of some humans, but of the very planet. These people have sentenced the planet to death. Now, that's really a huge issue. They've already killed a pope who tried to change things. Pope John Paul I was killed because on his desk the night before was seen a document changing the Catholic Church's position on birth control. He was murdered that night, and when they came in the next morning, his desk, which was always cluttered, was completely clean and there was nothing on it. He had been deliberately murdered because he wanted to change the position of the Church on birth control. This is an evil action without parallel in all the earth. The Vatican is ruled by masters of deceit who have no concern for the teachings of Jesus at all and are simply there because they want more people for their armies to wage war and kill each other. They are totally involved in nothing spiritual at all. The Catholic Church and the Christian fundamentalists were the ones that forced or prevailed upon Bush to take this anti-birth control off the table. Now there's something else equally evil about this, or even more evil, and that is the Christian Church's condemnation of sex. Sex is a very important thing. It is a normative way of getting ecstasy, which gives meaning to life. And to tell people that sex is evil is about as evil as you can get. People know perfectly well that sex isn't evil. It's good. There's only one regulation on sex. It must always be done with mutual consent. And with that, it's all just fine. I want to tell you a story that I've heard repeated over and over again from the seminary that is one of the greatest horrors on the planet. A group of seminarians are in the room, and there's an old fuddy-duddy priest there. And they're talking about sex. And all of a sudden, the old priest yells, "All you guys who are masturbating are going to hell." That is a crime against humanity of such proportions because he is saying what the Vatican's saying. It's a lie, it's a cheat, and it's evil. There's nothing the matter with masturbation, nothing at all. It's better if you do it with consent of somebody else, sure, but it's just fine. Let it happen. It's an awfully good method of birth control. And by the way, there is another very good method of birth control, and that's homosexuality. There's nothing wrong with that either. And as a matter of fact, when overpopulation occurs in any population, homosexuality rises to compensate. Now, it's the divine method of keeping the population within realms. It happens to the dogs, it happens to the rats, it happens to the chickens, it happens to humans. But the church goes against the will of God by condemning it. And goes against the will of God by condemning masturbation. And goes against the will of God by not supporting birth control. God will take care of the problem, and we won't like it. The manner in which this draws down the wrath of the stars upon this planet, we are about to experience. And that is going to be a megavolcanic explosion, right perhaps at Yellowstone Park, which will bring the entire world down, will destroy the United States completely, and lay 2 feet of ash on the entire planet, which means it will kill off almost every living thing on its surface. But after that, whatever's left will have another chance. That's only one scenario. The other scenario is a comet, an asteroid, which, the size of Mount Everest, by smashing the Earth any place, will send a tidal wave 1,000 feet high over every continent on the Earth and wipe everything out. It's happened before. It will happen again. But it happens when humanity, in this case, brings it on by these violations of the rules of life. These things are never allowed to be said. If you get up as a priest and speak against the position that sex is sin, you are excommunicated. These people are the enemies of the survival of the earth. And I know that. I'm a lawyer. I'm a priest. I've been educated on both sides all the way up at Stanford and the seminary. And all of the evidence points to exactly what I'm saying. The Christian church in particular, and its surrogate, Islam. I think all the world should understand where Islam came from and why. And the Jesuits, in 2001, the Vicar General in Rome called all the Jesuit provincials to Rome to tell them about the origin of Islam. And here's what it was. About the year 425, somewhere along in there, Augustine of Hippo was called to Rome by the Bishop of Rome, not yet a pope. The first pope was in 761. Zachary. That's another story. But anyway, and was asked, how are you doing down in Africa? And Augustine said, we're baptizing thousands every year. Except the Arabs, and they won't come in. Well, why? Now listen to this very carefully. Listen to this. The Arabs won't come in. Why? Quote, because they lived in Palestine at the time and know the story we tell about Jesus is not true. What? You mean the New Testament story of Jesus isn't true? That is correct. It is not. The Christian story of the New Testament is simply a solar hero made over. And then they went and burned all the evidence about Jesus which told the contrary. So there's nothing in the world except the New Testament to describe him. They burned up all. And then they said, well, what shall we do about this? Said the Pope. Said the bishop, rather. Find an Arab Jesus. It took them 150 years and they found Muhammad. And when they found him, they gave him North Africa. That's the origin of Islam. The Catholic Church created it deliberately to be there to bring the Arabs in who knew the true story of Jesus. My Lord. Really? Yes, really. I talked to a Jesuit who had been there. That's what was said. This is huge, isn't it? You look at all this and you realize the Christian church is not Christian. Or rather, yes, it is. The Christian church is Christian, but it has nothing to do with Jesus. Jesus rejected being a Christ. What? Sure. Listen to this. Jesus is in the desert being tempted. And the ego of his own ego tempts him, says, bow down and worship me, and I will make you king of all the world, king of kings. And Jesus says, hupage, that's Greek, get out of here, go. I choose not to be a Christ who rules the world, but a Jesus who, looking within myself, finds the presence of the Almighty. And my duty is to go around to people and help them find that same presence in themselves. That's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to rule you. I'm here to awaken your power to rule yourself. The empire doesn't like that. The empire says, you stupid ass. We will do it for you. And what will they do? Make a slave out of you and ruin your life for their own greed and benefit. The empire is the greatest evil on the planet. And Jesus rejected it. The Roman Church was founded to serve the empire. The Church of Peter and Paul in Rome is Julius Caesar's successor, established by Constantine, who is the real builder of the Christianity we know. The Church of Jesus, and I call it the Church of Jesus sanity. Is that good? The Christian insanity versus the Jesus sanity. And the Jesus sanity was in Jerusalem, in the assembly that Jesus and his brother James founded, the Church of Jerusalem. Oh, really? What did they call it? The Church of the Ebionites. Ebionite, what's that? Ebion is a Hebrew word meaning, it comes directly from the meaning poor in spirit. Remember that Jesus said something about poor in spirit? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of the heavens. What does poor in spirit mean? Does it mean you're kind of lowly or something? No. A person who is poor in spirit regards everyone as equal. And that's what the Ebionites believed, because that's what Jesus was holding to. This church of Jerusalem was condemned by Irenaeus of Lyon, who was the chaplain in charge of the Roman army in France. He invented the word heresy to describe the Ebionites, the Church of Jesus and James. And in doing that, erese is a Greek word, meaning to tear a garment. Remember how the Jews did it, even in the gospel, when Jesus said that he was the Son of God just like they were, and they tore their garment and walked out? The tearing of the garment is erese, from which comes the word heresy. Oh, you mean the word heresy was created by Irenaeus to describe the Church of Jesus and James in Jerusalem? Exactly. And not only that, Irenaeus does us a favor. We're going through every article of the creed that was later adopted by Constantine. And in that creed, there are only two things that the Ebionites believe. A, Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate, and B, he was crucified. Didn't die, didn't resurrect, none of them believe any of that. Only he suffered under Pontius Pilate and was crucified. That's the only thing that the Ebionites founded by Jesus and James believed of Jesus. That's in the creed. That creed of Irenaeus was adopted later by Constantine to make Christianity the religion of his army. Constantine didn't make Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire, just the religion of his army. Really? Yes, really. Constantine himself never became a Christian. But he did issue a decree given to Bishop Sylvester of Rome, which said, "You are no longer to regard Jesus as the Savior of the world. I, Constantine, am the Savior of the world. You are no longer to regard the God of Israel as the God of creation. I, Constantine, am the God of creation." That's a royal decree. It's in existence in the Vatican. What? In other words, the Church of Peter and Paul completely destroyed the truth of Jesus in the Ebionites and persecuted the Ebionites, first making them abandon Jerusalem to move across the Jordan River to Pella in Transjordan, and then destroyed them utterly. That's the beginning of our Christian religion as we know it. A pure religion of empire and slavery, having onward Christian soldiers marching as to war with the cross of Jesus going on before. Before this, the Roman army had been led by battle axe, the fasces, after which fascism is named. They had the fasces, the battle axe. In hoc signo vinces, in this sign you will conquer. Constantine ripped that off and put the cross of Jesus there and said, in hoc signo vinces from now on, in this sign of the cross of Jesus, you will conquer the world to be subject to me, the Emperor of Rome. Now how can you defend that? There are no holes in it. It's all absolutely true. And this is the fraud to which we have been subjected. Jesus was a master. Jesus was a master who was a harbinger of the golden age. But his teachings are not at all what the church teaches. The church is an instrument of tyranny and destruction, and somewhere in our hearts we all knew that. Well, when you look at this, let us indeed rescue Jesus from the church. Let us spread Jesus' sanity, which will allow for everybody to be a Jesus. And let us forget the Christ. By the way, where did the Christ come from? The Christ is strictly a character of the empire. Christ means anointed one in Greek. The Hebrew word is Messiah, which means anointed one in Hebrew. But anointed where? And when? And by whom? Why, the Pharaoh of Egypt. The Pharaoh of Egypt is anointed by the Hierophant of Heliopolis with a masa, as in the word Messiah, Egyptian word, masa, on his forehead like that. What's he anointed with? Crocodile fat. And that's what masa means. Crocodile fat. Reptilian fat. Why? Because the gods of Sumer are reptilians. And it's all in the book that's coming out by Zecharia Sitchin. The whole thing's going to be made into a big movie about the gods of Sumer and the 12th planet, and how these gods are the gods of all the world. And all the time we've been thinking we're serving God, we're serving the gods of Sumer, who dominate everything, including Christianity, and certainly Islam, and certainly Judaism. Now, the Hindus kind of get out the other side. They worship them too, but not with such intensity. Now, these people are from a satellite star of the dog star Sirius, which moves in coordination with the sun in a elliptical form. The sun has a rotation in an ellipse. None are circular, you know, they're ellipsoid. And the dog star Sirius has one, and they cross like this to make a vesica Pisces. You know about that, don't you? And as they do it, their Greek gravity pulls us up for one half and down for the other half. And this is the cycle of the ages and the yugas, which are given down by the Vedas from the last golden age. Stars influence us. And when they pull together, we go into the golden age. And when they pull apart, we go into the dark ages. This is the regulation of the human race on the planet. But these gods of Sumer are coming from a planet that was around that star. And so, what? Well, let's see who they are. They're all in the Bible, curiously. The principal god of Sumer is, for the Bible, is El. El-Hadad. Ishra-El. Ish-Ra-El. Man struggles with God. And God's name is El or Elohim or Elohim, which is a male singular with a male plural and a feminine plural. It's hermaphroditic. Allah is Eloch, which is El with a feminine plural. Now, what? You mean Elohim and Allah are the same God? Yes. And what God is that? A god of Sumer. And who? Does he have a family structure, this god of Sumer, who's only a god and a reptilian? Yes, he does. His brother is Nanar Sin, the god of Sinai. Big surprise, huh? And who is their father? Enlil. And what does Enlil mean in Sumerian? Emperor. And who is Enlil's father? Why, Anu, or Om, who has by his wife Antu their only begotten son, Enlil. And Enlil, as only begotten son of God, has appointed for him a human being, Enoch, whose name is not Enoch really, but Enmedaranki, Lord of the encoded information for the maintenance of the bondage between the gods of Sumer and the human race. That's what it is. And that's the source of anti-Semitism. Because the Jewish nation holds that bloodline. And Jesus was in that bloodline, and that's why he was the Christ, entitled to rule the world, and he rejected it. Pretty heroic, I would say.
But you're describing my Jesus. You're describing the Jesus I want in my life.
Of course.
The kind, the compassionate.
Yes.
The Jesus that says, you are my brother.
That's right.
I am your caretaker.
That's
and
right.
That my heart is your heart. That's
Exactly.
my Jesus.
That's, of course.
That's the one that I grew up believing in.
Of course.
And the closest I could get to it was the Catholic Church, because I had no other spiritual connection. There wasn't any other vehicle for me.
Well, that's right. That's why I did it too.
Yes.
But the point is, the Catholic Church is the worst of them all.
It certainly is in your perspective, but by the same token, it gives you a perspective of elevation. You're a little better than just being, you know, walking on the animal land.
Well, yes. But the thing is, this is typical master of deceit stuff, in which the truth is used to imprison you instead of set you free. The Catholic Church says Christ is the good guy. No, Jesus is the good guy. And we all know that, don't we? Now, this huge picture of the world is about to come out in a thing you're doing, isn't it? We're going to give the real story of Jesus right from the beginning. But Enmedaranki, now notice this is the bigger one still, in a way. Enmedaranki, Enoch, is the vicar of Enlil, who is the vicar of Om, the Father in heaven, right? Notice this. Enlil, Anu, Enmedaranki, right? 1, 2, 3. Now let's look at Pope Zachary, who is the first pope, and what he did in order to get the empire back to Rome from Constantinople. He forged a document called the Donation of Constantine. And everyone knows it's a forgery, but in that, Constantine is said to have said, from now on, the Bishop of Rome shall be regarded as the vicar of Christ on earth, as Christ is the vicar of God in heaven. The exact parallel to the Sumerian grant of power to Enmedaranki. What? It's impossible that Zachary didn't know. We should know too. That forgery is the sole document upon which the authority of the Pope rests. The Pope needs to be kicked out. It's a forgery and fraud all the way. And Jesus never set it up. Now, this whole thing involves the concept of authority in the entire Western world. Authority in the Western world comes from the Catholic Church and the Roman Empire. The authority of the Catholic Church is strictly from a Roman emperor. It has nothing to do with God at all. So surely you do not question the authority of Holy Mother Church. Yes, I do. They need to be indicted, these people. This is a crime against humanity. Authority. And these books that they tell us about, the Bible is a fraud. Now, it is certainly no good for authority. The Old Testament never existed, and that was made up in Alexandria, in the Septuagint in Greek. The original Old Testament isn't in Hebrew, it's in Greek. The story of that's too long to go into right now, but I can give you every step of it. The Bible put together, yes.
Robert, would you like to be excused?
You what?
Do you want to be excused? Okay.
Excused?
You had to go to your room?
No, it's
You're
okay. I can listen.
Because sometimes when he gets to overload, he explodes.
Well, I don't think he's about to, are you? And I'll finish this fairly quickly. Now look.
Oh, don't cut it short. I just wanted
No,
to.
we just were
to
double
ask-
checking
Just checking
everybody.
if everybody's okay.
Thank
Because
you.
Robert already did this, he's been on the spotlight since 1 o'clock this afternoon, so I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Now-
and the Septuagint.
This, the Septuagint, where they took all the books of the Old Testament, or the ones that they liked, they kicked out a whole bunch of them. They were in a little hutch sitting on the altar in the Jewish tabernacle. The Bible, only means a book, and it comes from the Babylonian seaport in Lebanon, which is Biblos. Any codex is a Bible. It was invented by the Phoenicians. And the Bible, as we know it, is that particular codex beginning with the Alexandrian Septuagint in Greek. Now I'll stop with that now. I've got a lot more there, but let's leave it. Now therefore, this Bible was assembled to serve a particular viewpoint. You must ask not only the author, but the editor and the publisher in particular. And you will find out the agenda of the publisher is always the one that controls the book. We better self-publish, right? Now, therefore the Bible, though it contains very much useful information, is edited to serve questionable purposes. And if that's true of the Old Testament, it's even more true of the New Testament. The New Testament is full of mistakes, massive mistakes. Mistakes about the political events of Palestine and the geography of Palestine that are so egregious that no one who was there could ever have made them except deliberately. One of the major points is, of course, there was no Nazareth in Jesus' time. It did not exist. Jesus was not from Nazareth, he was a Nazarite. A Nazarite is an Essene. The Nazarite vow was taken at Qumran Monastery, built out of Alexandria. The Nazarite vow was, don't cut your hair or your beard, and don't take psychedelic substances.
By the way, you should remember that you have another speech tonight, huh?
I know. I'll match this up. We'll let it go here in a minute. Now, this entire disenfranchisement of the Catholic religion in particular, and all of its surrogates as well, means that we have been getting our authority from fraudulent sources. There is not one government in Europe which can stand up under this. We need to abolish them all and start over. And let us have the government of the whole continent and not of any nation. The authority, here's what Constantine says also in the Declaration, the donation of Constantine. He says, from now on, the Bishop of Rome shall appoint all kings and queens. And that is the origin of the divine right of kings. It comes from a forged document, which Constantine never signed. Now this means that the entire authority system of Europe is a no-show. It's all based on fraud. There's only one proper source of authority, and that is from a combination of individual sovereignties. Sovereignty means souverain. The truth is in you, whoever you are. We all have the power to know the truth, given to us by God. And all sovereignty must derive from the combination of individual sovereignties, which means that it can only come by delegation from all the people and not by some stupid emperor somewhere. Now this, of course, is the Declaration of Independence. We're right back to that. We hold these truths to be self-evident, sovereign. All human beings are created equal. and sovereign. And all human beings are created equal, endowed by their Creator with an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of the sense of the meaning of life, which we shall call happiness. That is the only possible valid source of authority on the planet. It always has been. The idea that any individual can snap that away is a fraud. And the basic support of the theft is the Christian religion, the enemy of human happiness, if there ever was one. And do the research, you'll find it there. And the research has been done plenty of times, and they found it there and then burned the evidence. Just like what Bush said to the United Nations. You guys are not to consider the question of corporate rule. You guys are not to question the authority of the American government. You guys are not to question the authority of Europe. You're not allowed to think about those things. Why? Because if you do, you'll find it isn't there. So, these are the indictments that lie before us. And the good news is, no king is your sovereign except yourself. And a true democracy, which the Bush administration knows nothing about, is comprised of the unanimous consent of a population. There are no majorities in this matter. Truth must be honed and perceived unanimously by any true population. In that case, there is no delegation. Now, what you were saying earlier about women is absolutely true. In an originally innocent society, women in a group with unanimous consent are the primary decision makers and the legislature of life. They're called grandmother councils. I'm forming them as fast as I can. I examine you guys and say, you do it. Have women come together and learn how to do what they can do so well, unanimously perceive the same thing. Here's the way a meeting goes, and I'll shut up. Women gather together and sit, like the Quakers, in silence, and wait until they perceive unanimity. And then one of them says, I believe we are unanimous. Another says to the archaeosynagoguist, the one who is delegated for the homework, are there any decisions we are called upon to make today? And she will say, yes, a lady has come and asked us to help her. Oh, and so the lady comes forth and gives her problem with making a decision. They discuss it, put all the things on the table. And then the women go back into their unanimity and wait until it appears again, and someone says, I believe we are unanimous. And another person says, and I believe this is our decision. Thank you. Next item of the agenda. That's a true legislature. That's the golden age. That is possible, and it is being done today in certain places. The other council is the grandfather council. The men have to learn how to do this from women because they're in testosterone overdrive, and it's very difficult for them to find this unanimity of heart-mind, which is so much easier for the women to do. But they can learn it, and when they do, they become the administrative council to carry out the decisions. And then 4 times a year, at equinoxes and solstices, the two councils get together to be the judicial council, which looks back over the decisions of the last quarter and sees whether they worked or not, and goes from there. That is what Benjamin Franklin intended to be the government of the United States. And I'll end with this one statement from Hiawatha by Longfellow. Gitche Gumee is Lake Erie. It was the center of the Iroquois Nation. By the shores of Gitche Gumee, by the shining Big Sea water, stood the wigwam of Nokomis, daughter of the moon, Nokomis. What does Nokomis mean? Daughter of the moon. And what was she? A member, Hiawatha's grandmother, a member of the Grandmother Council. And this is Benjamin Franklin's source of the Declaration of Independence. We need this to be in our books, don't we? Don't we need to put that out there in a university someplace and have it taught somewhere, if not everywhere? This is what America stands for. This is who we are. And we've lost it completely, ripped off by the robber barons. The corporate, soulless people who don't care for anybody except their own greed. And they are the enemies of human happiness and the remnants of the Dark Ages which impede our becoming who we are. So there it is. There's a lot more to it, of course, but enough's enough for me. That'll do it and hold it on. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, you just ended with, you know, the enemies of human happiness. And Mr. Muller was talking about happiness a while ago. You were also talking about the corporate robber barons. And maybe if you're not too tired, could you say a few words about what I was talking about earlier? How can we reconcile this dream of equity and justice and harmony, of more of the principles of the feminine, with what we see happening today, with the corporate domination generating mostly from this country, and an administration bent on worldwide control through manipulation and fear and greed? Where, from your perspective, as you have worked with governments and groups all over the world all these years, what do you see as ways to turn this trend of this insane administration?
Well, if you have to take the entire system of the United Nations. The world today is confronted with hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of dreams, new inventions. Now we have 192 countries, which we never had before. It's mind-boggling what this human species has on this planet. And the United Nations and its 32 specialized agencies is following all this. And regarding population and the increase of the world population, this has become a monumental big problem at the United Nations. And they are trying by every means to have all governments have a control of the population. So that this is all done. What you say about the Christians, the UN would not even look into it. We're not going to discuss God or non-God and so on. You, country so-and-so, you have a growth of population which is so much, which is irresponsible for the world. So either we are going to catastrophe, and we have the figures. You get the figures when this coming up. When now we are from 2 billion, we are 6 billion, even more this year. From 6 billion in the year 2050, we are going to be 8 billion. And we have no view even that this will stop, and probably at the next century, we will be 10 billion people on this planet more. And the strange thing is it's not in the West. The United States is losing has been lost 50 million people in the last few years. Why? Because the families do not want to have more children because it's too expensive to put them into schools. So you have an incredible situation, whereas in the poor countries, they are not even thinking about this. And the United Nations has been trying to have every developing countries to teach their married people to make love without having children. They do not want to have 7 to 10 children and not knowing what to do with them. They will be very happy with 2 or 3. But it was so difficult to tell them that they should do this at the moment of life. And now that most countries were agreed to that, Mr. Bush has withdrawn everything from every embassy to have to deal with population increase. Why? Because probably he thinks the more people in the developing countries there will be, the more there will be things sold to them. But at the same time, very smartly, what is he doing? He is closing the borders. Because in about 10 or 20 years, these young people who are born in the poor countries, they will have no jobs there. And then they will knock at the United Nations and the United States, and the United States will have covered everything and closed it. So that this is the situation which you can see from the population. And of course, with the Catholics, you don't even have a debate with them. The Catholics in the totality, when you look at the Chinese, the billions of people you have in China and in other countries, the Catholics have to.
You gave him to me. If you want him, take him. She walked out. Next morning she came in there, I was asking for breakfast, all looking fine. No fever, nothing. But during the interim, I woke up in the middle of the night, or seemed to, and then there was a window over here that the sun came up in. I was over here, and I looked down there and saw that window. And I said, wow, I like that. And I got up out of myself and looked back and saw myself lying there. And I walked off, and it was like being inside of a whale. And you could see the ribs up ahead with the shadow on this side and the sun on the other. I walked down and I said, whoa, this is beautiful. I love this. And all of a sudden, a voice says to me, go back. It isn't time. And very regretfully, I turned around and started to go back. And the voice, I said, oh, okay. And I went back. And I never forgot. That dominated the rest of my life. I had died and returned. And I knew there was somewhere to go. And no one could ever take it away from me.
Yeah.
So I became quite religious and got all this stuff. And I became quite scientific and did all that stuff. And I got very legal and learned to be a lawyer. And I did all this stuff. And I finally ran for office in Santa Cruz and got elected district attorney in order to find out what was wrong with the government. And I discovered the thing wasn't wrong with the government, it was wrong with the religion. The religion was the problem. So when I left being district attorney, I went to the seminary and became a Catholic priest. Because if you're going to find out what's wrong with it, go to the source. So I did. But I wasn't really entirely motivated by it. I was really giving it a chance to be true. Then as I got into it, I was able to stay in because I kept learning stuff. And I did the research in the Latin the others didn't do, and I learned the Greek and the Hebrew language the others didn't do, and a lot of other things. And without that, I never could have understood. The seminary was very important. But then after I got out, lo and behold, John the 23rd was Pope. And he was different. He was saying, he said the one thing that made my life totally different. He said, we have paid so much attention to original sin that we have forgotten original innocence. And I said, boy, I like that. Yes, look at that. I think I'll spend the rest of my time finding out original innocence. I did what the Pope suggested. And lo and behold, I found out what it was. And then I began to see where the mistake was. The religion was not emphasizing innocence. It was emphasizing sin. And that's a bad idea. If you're going to do something, you grasp with the positive and the negative will take care of itself. But they don't have any positive. It's all negative. And so I said, that's what's wrong. And then I started to learn. And little by little, I began to feel sorry for all these people, especially the popes and all the other people who were doing it all wrong. I thought, hey guys, why are you doing this? You're ruining your life. You're making yourself into a hypocrite of self-condemnation. You're playing guilt. You're putting people down. What are you doing? That isn't the will of God. And so little by little, I began to find out more stuff. And little by little, I drifted away from the diocese and started doing it on my own. Then I began to change the liturgy because the liturgy wasn't pointed in the right direction either. You're going to eat the body and blood of Christ? I don't think so. The body and blood of Christ? And then there was a song they sang that really offended me. Eat his body, drink his blood, until we sing a song of love. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Cannibalism. No way. Jesus didn't intend us to eat his body and blood. That's ridiculous. Now, maybe there's some use in this, though, because after all, a lot of creatures give their lives for us every day. So I decided that the real sacrament was to sit down at the dinner table, look at your plate, and send a blessing to every creature there that had died for you. Send it back through time to awaken the ecstasy of death in the creature before the stroke. And thus, you will be set free of the karma of killing. But that's what the priesthood should be for, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Instrument of the priest is a knife. Action of the priest is to kill. The art of the priest is to awaken the ecstasy of death in the victim before the stroke. And the purpose of the priest is to give God a good reputation in a predatory universe. There's your theology. That's what sacrifice is about. It's about joy. It's about a sacred thing as a thing that awakens the ecstasy and the sense of the meaning of life in every cell in your body. That's what it's for. So, all of a sudden, they don't want to talk to me anymore. No, no, no. No, please don't say that. No, no. Oh, no. So I wrote a letter to Cardinal Mahoney, who was an old friend of mine, and I said, Roger, I have always loved you, and I have. And I said, remember that conversation we had under the Spina Christi tree, the seminary, when I said, I think that when Jesus said, the scribes and Pharisees are hypocrites, I think they're talking about the priests of the Catholic Church. And he said, he said, Charlie, that's a very dangerous opinion. And I said, Roger, I've come to agree with you, it is a very dangerous opinion. But I now believe it's a very true opinion. And then we go on from there, in which I outline for Roger what I have found about the origin of the church, where it was, where it's going, and what we need to do about it. And the last line of the letter says this, Roger, don't you think it's time we rescued Jesus from the church? Yes. And Jesus said, right on.
You're awesome. You're awesome.